What is up, my ducks and drakes? Welcome to the Crowded Lake. Today we'll be reading When at First You Don't Succeed by ElliottGreen333 on Wattpad, chapters 21 through the end. Today's reading will be accompanied by special guest reader, Diamonds and Emeralds. Stay tuned to the end, the iCard, or in the description below to see her channel. Part 21, Deceit. I called out Remus's name as he fell deeper into limbo. My heart dropped down to the floor. Remus was gone. That was it. Personalities don't regenerate once they fall into limbo. No new Remus would come along. Even if one did, he wouldn't be my Remus. Thomas's intrusive thoughts are just gone. Forever. Rat's pounding feet started barreling towards me. I went wide-eyed, but ducked quickly, making my way towards Virgil's weak and limp body. When I was closer, I could see faint breaths. He was grabbing onto his stomach where Wrath shot him, blood forming a small puddle around him. I sighed in relief. At least he's not dead. I'm not losing another friend tonight. Wrath came up behind me, picked me up by my neck. My feet couldn't reach the ground. His eyes were like fire against my skin, carving into me. He squeezed my neck tighter in his fist. Spots of warm color started to fill my vision.
Where are my powers? What did you do to me?
His voice echoed around. Isn't it obvious? I squeaked out. They're awake. Wrath's eyes widened. He moved closer to Limbo, holding me above the pit.
Give me one damn good reason why I shouldn't drop you down to join Remus,
he demanded, in a fearful attempt to save my skin. I thought fast. Because I could still help you, I lied. His eyebrows rose.
Perhaps you can.
He turned around and slammed me on the ground. I sucked in the chilling air, cleaning my airways through harsh coughs. Wrath pounded his foot into my chest, hovering above me. I could feel the heat of his angry aura. He held his hand out over my face. My pupils shrunk as yellow hue ran into his glowing hand. I yelled out and twitched violently. I could feel my face go as red as I was forgetting to breathe. Just trying to hold on to my aura was taking all my concentration. Wrath removed his hand and I choked for air. His eye was glowing a bright yellow, and he stared at me. My eyes were droopily weak, but I fought to stay awake. Virgil started to stir, moaning in uncomfortable pain. Wrath's neck snapped upward towards his direction. He stepped over me, getting his foot off my chest. I rolled over, balancing my hands and knees. I looked up at them, but felt sick at what I was seeing. Wrath had picked up Virgil by the collar of his shirt. Virgil's head was bobbed to the side, while Wrath was biting into Virgil's neck. I felt anger rise up in my throat. Virgil's my friend, as much as I tried to ignore that while I served Wrath. It's the truth. Wrath let go of Virgil, who fell limply to the ground with a sickening thump. Wrath extended his hand to Virgil, and his aura spun into his hand. His eyes turned to me, half yellow and half purple.
This time he won't come back,
Wrath said, kicking him to the side. With that, Wrath turned backwards towards the subconscious, walking inside of it. I crawled towards Virgil, getting his half-dried blood on my clothes. I turned him over onto his back. I sat up on my knees and looked at his shot wound. It looked bad. Super swollen, but not bleeding as much. Some loser's tears slipped down my face. Don't worry, Virgil, I said, not sure who I was talking to. The others are awake. They'll be here soon. I looked back the way we came from. I hope. I leaned my head down on Virgil's chest. His heartbeat was spotty and weak. I told Virgil's unresponsive hand in my own. I cried into him. I can't believe I let this happen. I started to snap my fingers, hoping that some of my magic was still left, and I could wake him up. But I couldn't. I listened to Wrath out of fear. I told Remus to just follow along. Oh God. Remus. What am I going to tell Roman? Or Thomas, for that matter? I can feel weight of the entire situation falling on my shoulders, pulling closer to the ground. Everything hurts now. I let my eyes slip closed and my mind rest. I just wanted to sleep and not wake up right now. Part 22. Roman. The noise on the screen made my heart stop. Where was Virgil? What was happening? Is he okay? Logan started pressing buttons on Virgil's panel, trying to get some sort of answer. Penny was crying into his hands. I felt numb, but so scared at the same time. Logan suddenly removed his hands from the panel as Virgil's side went gray and our sides lit up.
Please note, creativity, logic, and morality functions have been reactivated. Anxiety function is no longer active.
The screen popped up with another notice.
Virgil's not active?
Logan questioned. What does that mean? Patton sobbed. It sounded familiar to me. I was snapping my fingers, trying to jog my memory when it finally hit. The message came up when Patton was attacked! I blurted.
Then Virgil was bitten by deceit.
Logan said. Patton sobbed louder, causing Logan to wrap his arms around him. A final message popped up onto the screen.
Warning, subconscious is being changed.
We all stopped to view the notice. Logan started messing with the panel, pressing the command button, but watching nothing happen.
That should have booted the side out of there.
Logan stated.
Why is nothing working?
The subconscious is being changed, Logan, Pat reminded him. The subconscious doesn't have to listen to us anymore. They listen to whoever's changing it. I have good news. I guess to who is changing it, I said. Both Logan and Patton nodded in agreement. Wrath wouldn't just shut us down and then leave. That's not what he wanted to do all those years ago. It's not what he wants to do now. The subconscious is far from here. We should get moving, I suggested.
We might be able to rise up there,
Logan said, thinking deeply. But our auras are weaker than the power of the subconscious holds. Especially now, we're at our weakest, Patton protested. I ran my hands through my hair nervously. I didn't want Virgil back. He knows what to do. He knows the Dark Mind Palace better than any of us.
True, Patton,
Logan finally said.
But the subconscious knows it's in danger, so it might not take as much energy.
But we don't want to show up there too weak to fight.
Yes, but we also want to get there fast. Who knows Virgil's condition or how far Wrath is in his progress of taking over Thomas.
Virgil's room! I shouted. The two sides looked at me confused. Frankly, I was confused too. I was very deep in thought whilst they were arguing, hearing their words, but not fully paying attention.
I'm sorry,
Logan said.
But what?
Virgil was the last one to get bitten in his room. Should still have some aura in it. He shouldn't be too weak. Logan looked taken back by my statement. Patton looked back and forth between us two. Loki, will that work? Patton said quietly to Logan.
It might. It'd be risky considering how his aura affects us, but I think if we did it fast enough, we could get out without getting affected.
Patton clapped his hands together and hugged Logan. I beamed happily. I didn't care what it took to get Virgil. We're getting him back. Our feet patterned up the stairs like heavy rain. We went to Virgil's room, on the balls of our feet, ready to go. He opened the door, and his room almost looked the same. The walls were a bit paler, and some of his many posters were beginning to fall, but I think my plan will still work. We huddled in the room, spreading ourselves out and taking a few deep breaths, not wanting the anxiety to affect us.
Remember, not only will taking the aura from the room help us travel, but the room will also help us in getting to Virgil as sooner or later. It'll sense something's wrong and send help.
Logan rambled. Me and Patton nodded. Good luck, guys, Patton hummed. With that, we each closed our eyes and focused on the room's energy. The energy felt warm and inviting at first, like a warm blanket during harsh winters. I wanted it to surround me, but then it got cold. Fast. I wanted to escape it, but no matter what I did, I just wanted it to surround me, smuggle me, kill me. I tried to scream out, but my voice was mute. I was getting scared. What was this hellish feeling? I tried to close off my mind, thinking of something better, thinking of the imagination. The fact that the world bends to me. It's not like a power rush, more like a wave of endless possibilities. I felt that feeling begin to surround me. I opened my eyes to a whirlwind of red aura circling me. Looking over at Logan, he had a dark blue aura circling him, and Patton had the same light blue. I can't believe this was working. The world begins to grow, as I start to sink into the floor. Logan and Patton were following suit. I closed my eyes again, and felt myself get pushed through the mind palace. Going into the darkest realm of the mind felt odd, but I knew I had to go there. Virgil was in trouble, and I wasn't going to sit around and wait. That's not the type of prince I am. Part 23. Logan.
I rose up in the deep, dark depths of Thomas's mind. All the logical feeling that had been surrounding me was gone. It was replaced with a cold, burning sensation in my chest. The air surrounding this place and the mind palace was thinner, seeing as Thomas's subconscious should be fully developed by now. Obviously, wrath was giving Thomas's mind a makeover. I opened my eyes and dropped to my hands and knees, feeling lightheaded after traveling this far. I breathed in long breaths, trying to return my suddenly fast breathing. A lot of things were happening really fast. I just hope we can stop this in time.
Loki!
I heard a peppy voice yell at me. I looked up with half-open eyes. Seeing Patton rush towards me filled me with hope and love. I weakly smiled as he wrapped his arms around me and helped me up.
Are you alright?
I'm fine, my love. I'm just a little winded. Are you okay? Patton blushed at my words.
I'm fine. I was just so worried about you,
he said, pushing his face into my chest and letting out a few stray sobs. My heart fluttered, but I returned his crushing hug. His sobs soon slowed, and he looked up at me, his brown eyes full of sadness.
I just want this to be over,
he mumbled. I know, Patton, and it will be, soon. I tilted my head up and looked around. I noticed we were missing some sort of Disney prince. Where's Roman?
Get away from him!
I whipped my head around and Patton peered over me. Behind us, soon Roman, his sword out. He was looming over a fearful Deceit, who was holding himself against Virgil's limp body. God, I mumbled. I grabbed Patton's hand and we both ran towards Roman. He looked ready to stab Deceit at any second, or worse. Me and Patton both stopped. I didn't realize how close the subconscious was to limbo. I swallowed a hard lump in my throat while Patton ran over to Roman, trying to make him lower his sword.
You don't understand, Roman,
Deceit pleaded. He had his hand over Virgil's stomach, and his yellow gloves were stained with red.
I don't need to understand. I know what you did to me and my friends, and I won't let you do it again.
Roman's boot connected with Deceit's face. Patton gasped as Deceit rolled back, nearly falling into limbo. Roman let out a shocked gasp. I followed his gaze to Virgil's stomach. There was a bullet-sized hole where Deceit's hand was. He was trying to stop the bleeding. He was trying to save Virgil.
That's what I was trying to tell you, you bastard!
Deceit said, struggling to get up. Once he did, he limped back over to Virgil. I moved in closer, getting on my knees to take a closer look. The bleeding had stopped, but the wound looked pretty big. Deceit dropped to his knees and looked at me. It was then I realized everyone was looking at me for an answer. I blushed and scrambled to find my words. He should be all right, but we should find Wrath quickly so we can get him back, and I can aid him from there. Patton and Deceit nodded, but Roman's hands passed through his hair as he grumbled.
Why can't you do it now?
He demanded.
Ro, take it easy. Logan doesn't have the tools. We didn't know what to expect when coming here.
Patton pleaded.
Oh, so, while we're hunting Wrath, we'll leave him here to die. Great plan, Logic.
He spat out. I didn't show it, but his words stung. Deceit's face scrunched up in disgust, glaring up at Roman.
Well, did you bring the equipment to help him?
Patton huffed. Roman opened his mouth to protest, but then his face dropped. He was speechless.
Sorry, Logan. I suppose Patton's right.
I shoved his words aside and picked Virgil up. The others looked surprised, but I knew what I was doing. I carefully passed Virgil over to Roman. Virgil's body curled to Roman's touch, which, I must admit, was quite adorable. No. Take him back. There's a first aid kit in all of our bathrooms. Stitching his wound is just like stitching clothing. Go slow and be careful. Roman looked uncertain at first, but quickly nodded his head in determination. He sunk down and Patton looked up at me. I sighed. As much as we might need Roman for the final fight, I know how much it would kill him to know that Virgil was out here slowly dying. I turned to Deceit. What happened from after you bit Roman?
Well, with Wrath holding your 3 auras, him and Virgil opened the subconscious. After that, he demanded me to bite Virgil, which I did. The plan was to throw Virgil into limbo.
Patton gasped and I tensed up. Deceit noticed this.
But Wrath tried to push Remus in too. We both got angry, so I woke you guys up, which also woke Virgil up. Wrath shot Virgil. Wrath drained my aura, bit Virgil again, and stole his aura. And Remus?
Patton asked. Deceit didn't need to say anything. When he looked over his shoulder into limbo, we both knew what that meant.
No.
Patton breathed.
That was my breaking point.
Deceit sighed.
Virgil has always been my friend, and I can't just hide that factor anymore.
How long has wrath been in the subconscious? I questioned. Deceit shrugged, and we all turned our head to face it. It was glowing brightly, all except for Virgil and Remus's parts. I took a step forward. I only read about this place. Being able to actually see it is like a dream come true. Patton took his hand in mine, making me stop and look back.
Do we even have a plan?
I looked at Deceit, then back to Patton, forming a quick plan in my head. Deceit, you know Wrath better than we do. You'll have to be our main fighter. You know how your powers and Virgil's powers work, and if that's how he's going to fight, so be it. Deceit nodded. I looked to Patton. You and I will have to stop the subconscious reprogram. Who knows what Wrath wants this time, but we need to stop it before Thomas's mind fully changes forever. Patton nodded, turning back towards the subconscious and stepping inside. Feeling a wave of concern flood me. I hope this works.
Part 24. Patton. Logan took a couple steps inside Thomas's subconscious. I'll admit, it made me more and more worried the further we walked inside. I've heard many rumors about the subconscious in the past. Actually being here makes my skin crawl with the nerves. Me and Deceit shared a nervous glance, but I followed Logan inside, and Deceit followed me. It was actually fairly pretty inside. Right now, we were at the 7-way fork in the road. Each way corresponded with one of us. Our colors were glowing brightly. Virgil's was dull and dark, which brought tears to my eyes. Logan sent Virgil away with Roman. I don't know how wise of a choice that was, but I knew Logan did it for the good reason. I turned my head towards Remus's path, which was literally falling apart. I heard Deceit muffle a couple sobs. I looked over at him. He was clutching his stomach with one hand and covering his mouth with the other hand. I've never seen him so broken. I put my hand on his shoulder. His eyes widened and looked into my caring ones. Sorry, he muttered, putting his hands at his side. It's okay. I know how hard it is to look at, I said calmly. I heard Logan sputter out a couple of confused questions, moving back over to him. He was looking between Roman's mind and his parts of the subconscious. He had a very puzzled expression on his face as he examined our sections. I looked closer at mine. It was my color of light blue, but it had little white words, almost like code, floating around in the sea of blue. I turned back to Logan. What's the matter?
Everything is Patton. Wrath's done way worse damage than I thought.
How so?
He's not just overpowering Thomas's dark side so he'll listen to them more than us. He's completely rewriting his whole personality.
What does that mean? I asked, getting slightly more worried just by reading Logan's facial expressions.
That means if we don't stop Wrath soon, Thomas could no longer have a sense of morality, logic, or creativity. Instead, we could be written as immorality, incoherence, and predictability. This could change Thomas as we know him forever.
I gasped, covering my mouth with my hands. This can't be real. This can't be happening. Is Wrath really still angry about all those years ago? What about me and Virgil? Deceit asked.
More than likely, he'll just control or manipulate you into obeying him again.
Logan suggested. Deceit nodded sadly, understanding the sad truth to his words. Logan tore his eyes away from our aura and the subconscious and moved forwards. Me and Deceit followed quietly behind. I was looking around me, taking in all the colors and the swimming codes. My eyes landed on Deceit, who was fidgeting with his gloves. I recognized the look on his face. It was one often Virgil made whenever he was nervous. I grabbed his forearm and watched him look at me with glossy eyes. Deceit shook his head and rubbed his eyes. Sorry, I was completely spaced out. No need to be sorry. I just want to talk. Seems like you have something on your mind. Deceit nodded and let out a shaky breath. He looked up at Logan, who was not paying attention to us. Rather, he's still examining the coded walls. Deceit pulled me back and around Roman's section of the subconscious. Deceit took another breath and searched for words. I guess it's just hard for me. I don't want to work for Wrath again. His words trembled. After he betrayed me and Remus, I don't know. I know it's probably odd for me to not want to be the villain. He asked me. No, kiddo, not at all. You never were the villain. You were just looking out for Thomas in your own way. That's what we were all doing." I gave him a weak smile, and he returned it. Without another thought, I wrapped my arms around him. He let out an uncertain breath before slowly wrapping his arms around me, too. We pulled apart, and he looked at me. "What happened between you guys and Wrath?" Based on Deceit's panicked look, I knew I couldn't have looked happy. He went back to his words, but I held up my hand. "You need to know." Deceit nodded, and we both took a seat on the ground, like little kids. I sighed. "When Thomas was really young, like most kids, he had a temper, and me and Logan were very confused as to why he had such a temper. When Roman appeared, the temper vanished, so we shrugged it off. However, one day," I cleared my throat, "Wrath showed up in the Mind Palace. We were afraid of him. Logan and Roman tried to stand up to him, but Wrath never listened. I never talked to him. Couldn't stand him being morality. Wrath also hated me. He painted mean things on my door, messed up me mentally, and contracted everything I said. One day I snapped. I yelled back at him. That started the war. After that, he spent way too much time with Thomas, trying to get him to make trouble. It took Roman, Logan, and I so much of our energy to make sure Thomas didn't do any of the things Wrath told him to do. Eventually, we had to shut Wrath out. We put chains on his wrists so his aura wouldn't work. Finally, we put him back here, and we haven't seen him since." Deceit nodded, but then went wide-eyed. "That makes sense. Wrath always talked about how Virgil was treated like an angel compared to himself, even though they're both dark sides." It was my turn to nod. Deceit stood up and straightened his back. He stood out for his hand for me. I took and stood on my feet. At this point, Logan had rounded the corner and found us.
"I know where we need to go. Follow me."
Me and Deceit were right behind him as he led the way, past our glowing sections of the subconscious. It got really dark, to the point that I couldn't see Logan anymore. I felt a hand wrap itself around mine. When we got back into the light, Logan was holding my hand. Deceit pushed himself in front of us and looked around. He turned around to us. "He's here." Part 25. Deceit. Logan and Patton went wide-eyed and looked around carefully. I could feel my aura, which meant I could feel Wrath's presence. I took quiet steps forward. The room was red and white code letters was flying all around the walls. There was also screens on the far wall that were like security cameras. I could see the imagination, the light mind palace, the dark mind palace, the dreamscape, everywhere. I continued. I stopped when I entered a new room. There was a platform. Wrath was pacing away from me. He was typing into a giant computer which acted as some conscious information center. He was muttering something to himself while banging the keys on the keyboard. My hand started shaking. Right in front of me, the side that betrayed me, stole my aura, killed my friend, and injured another. My hands formed to fists. I went to take a step forwards, but was pulled back by Patton.
"Remember the plan,"
Logan reminded.
"Fight him. Try to get your aura back. Me and Patton will try to shut down his programming."
I nodded and turned back to Wrath. My anger was over the moon. I couldn't wait to beat the shit out of him. "Wrath, do you know pressing all my keys at once doesn't do much good?" I said slyly. Wrath let out a chuckle and turned around. His yellow and purple eye was glowing brightly.
"Oh, Deceit, you have always been one for witty commentary, huh?"
He jumped out of his platform and charged at me, his fist glowing a bright yellow. I ducked and peered around him. When he turned back to me, I could see Patton and Logan sneak inside, slowly making their way to the platform.
"Do you miss me, Dee? Is that why you came slithering back like the snake you really are?"
He came towards me again, but this time I fought back. There were punches into his fist while he began hitting my face. He both slid back onto the ground, panting heavily.
"I see you've learned a couple new tricks,"
Wrath said. I stood back up and charged at Wrath. Before he could get back up, I slammed my foot into his stomach, enjoying the pain-filled scream he let out. He tried to suck in air, but I held my hand out. I didn't express any new emotion, and he just looked at my hand. "You have two options. You could give me back my aura, or I can take it. I hissed. His eyes narrowed, but I still didn't express.
Do it. See what I care. I'll just take it back and control your mind, just like you did to Virgil, isn't that right?
My face dropped. How did he know about that? My sentence crawled back up. I crouched my head and tried to ignore the thoughts swirling inside me. I can't let him get to me like this. Wrath pushed me onto my back and pressed his boot into my shoulder, making me cry out in pain.
What's the matter, Deceit? Feeling guilty?
He rammed my shoulder further into the ground.
You know, Deceit, after Thomas's entire personality is done being rewritten, you might not be needed anymore. You might get left back here to fade away like I was.
I heard my shoulder make a pop. I yelled out in a horrible pain. Wrath's foot found itself back into the ground, and I grabbed my shoulder. I didn't know what I was trying to do, whether I wanted to put it back into its socket or just find a different position for it.
You seem real positive that your little plan will work.
I struggled to say. I hoisted myself into a sitting position while Wrath chuckled with a devilish grin.
You're right. I am unusually cocky. Probably because I've planned this for over 20 years. Seeing it actually happens makes me a kid in the candy store.
He peered over to me. I glared at him, still holding my shoulder. My hands were shaking and my heart was thumping heavily.
For being Deceit, you're an awful liar.
Wrath continued.
You don't have to lie to me. I can see you're afraid of me. Not to mention, you're weak. I have your aura. I control Thomas now, and you can't change that.
Wrath slapped me, my face tingling. I raised a glance over to Pat and Logan's process. The screen looked the same, but they were both hard at work. I looked back over to Wrath, and he, slightly confused, but followed my gaze where they had been.
Hey!
He shouted. Logan and Patton's head whipped around as they gasped. Wrath's hands began to glow purple as he shot Virgil's aura at them. They both jumped off the platform, hitting the hard ground with a thud. Logan pushed themselves over to the elbows where Patton didn't move. Logan crawled over to Patton and put his head on his lap. Wrath moved closer, and Logan, who protected Patton.
I can't believe I fell for your excuse of a distraction.
Wrath directed his words at me. He glided up onto the platform and looked over at Patton and Logan.
I'm impressed.
He said at last.
You actually almost broke my code. But sadly, my knowledge on this place trumps yours, Logan.
Logan scowled while Wrath shrugged it off with a laugh. Wrath turned to me and smiled cuttingly.
Say goodbye to the logic, morality, and creativity as you know them, Deceit.
My mouth hung open, and scared breaths passed through it. I looked back and forth between Logan and Wrath. Without another word, Wrath hit the button. Command. I watched as Patton sat straight up, wide awake, gripping his head in pain. Logan did the same. They were both yelling through the gritted teeth. I could hardly watch. I had to do something. I stood up, clutching my shoulder, but running towards Wrath anyway. When I made my way onto the platform, my good hand, I bashed his head into the console, which made it spark. Wrath simply looked back up when I let go. His hands were lit up with anger. He grabbed my foot and threw me off the platform. The room was spinning slightly when I opened my eyes again. I had no words. Wrath was seeing through Thomas's eyes and putting his thoughts into Thomas's head. All of a sudden, I became too afraid. Logan, Patton, and more than likely Rowan were rendered useless, being completely changed right in front of my eyes. I don't know what to do. I don't know what I could do. All I know is that a very deep pull of sleep is gnawing at me. So, I gave in. Chapter 26, Roman. I rise up in Virgil's room. I looked worse than before. White walls, posters on the floor, broken windows, and then his closet door had fallen forwards. I panicked a little, but when Virgil moaned in my arms, I remembered the task at hand. I moved further into the room and set Virgil down on his bed. A first aid kit in every bathroom, Logan had said. He better be right. I walked into his bathroom, my eyes locking onto the medicine cabinet. My body gravitated to it, reaching out to the handle and pulling it open. I grabbed the first aid kit and slammed the cabinet door. Running back to Virgil, I got onto my knees, setting the kit next to him on the bed. I opened it up. There wasn't much inside, but it would work. I only had to stitch up Virgil's shot wound, so with a little I had to work with, I should be fine. I put drew gloves on my hands, feeling the material stick to my sweaty hands. I grabbed a small bottle of antiseptic and a cotton ball, cleaning off the wound of leftover blood. I tossed the cotton ball into the trash and continued, taking a needle and some thread. I threaded the needle and positioned it comfortably in my hand. I looked at the wound again, getting a little nervous. My hands were vibrating, my brow was damp. This wasn't just any surgery. This was Virgil's surgery. I didn't want to hurt Virgil, but I didn't have much choice. I stuck the needle in his chest and began to sew it up. Logan said this would be just like stitching clothes. This was nothing like stitching clothes. The clothes never moan, pain, or twitch. I went slowly and carefully. I cut the thread close to the chest when I was done. I looked over at my work. It wasn't bad, but it would have turned out better if it was clothes. I grabbed the first aid kit and took it back to the bathroom. I stuck the used tools under the sink with warm, bubbly water. I returned my gloves and threw them into the trash. Finally, I took some bandages and brought them back over to the Virgil. I wrapped his chest like a gift, making sure it was snug. I flopped back onto the ground and took a breath. I felt myself bathing in my success. I didn't think that surgery would ever end. I let my eyes slip closed, feeling my heart rate slow. I began to wonder about Logan, Patton, and Deceit. I hope they're doing all right. Maybe I should go back and help them now that I'm done with Virgil's operation. I heard a panicked gasp followed by violent coughs. I stood up, eyes open wide. I looked over to Virgil, who had run to his bathroom. I didn't need to see him to know that he was in the middle of puking up the venom in him. I slowly stood up and walked over to his bed. To the bathroom. When I didn't hear Virgil anymore, I knocked on the door. "Virgil, baby, you all right?" I heard. I pushed the door open and slowly sat next to my emo nightmare, who was leaning against the bathroom wall. I put his head on my shoulder and I kissed the top of his head. He let out a little laugh and I looked at him with a smile.
Why do I feel like shit?
"Raph got you, don't you remember?"
Do now.
Virgil admitted, rubbing his head. He lifted up his shirt and noticed the bandage around his chest. His skin was ghastly pale and his figure was slim. He pulled his shirt back now and sighed.
It's called a silent death.
"What?" I questioned.
Silent death, a power only dark sides are capable of, but we never do it.
He explained. A question crossed my mind. "How are you awake? Your aura's still gone. Your room hasn't returned to normal." Virgil nodded slightly, pushing himself back to his feet.
It's like Wrath said, I guess.
He paused, letting out a painful laugh.
Guess he was right.
Virgil shoved his hands into his pockets and shrugged his thoughts away. He stuck out his hand for me. I took it, thankfully. He pulled me up. We were face to face. I smiled at him, and he gave me a weak smile back. Maybe everything would turn out fine. I felt a sharp pain radiate across my skull. I pulled back from Virgil and grabbed my head. Teeth gnashed against each other as I took a few steps backward before crumpling to my knees. I couldn't hear anything Virgil was saying. I could barely hear my own thoughts. I wasn't focusing on them either, just focusing on the fact that all my creative ideas and emotions were being erased from my mind. Everything Thomas has ever thought of since I was creative. It was slipping. What the hell is happening? I let out a giant scream and banished my fist into the ground, growing angry over the new, boring thoughts flooding my head. I almost couldn't handle it much longer. So many thoughts were taking over, pushing me out of my own head. I was trying to fight it, but I was failing. I was being deleted. My hands fell by my sides. I made contact with the cold bathroom floor. Cold hands pulled me into a warm lap. My hands began shaking me awake from my troubled sleep. I opened my eyes slightly, and I looked up at the body to the hands. He must have been another side. Anxiety, I think. Wrath's thoughts flooded my head. My boss. Our boss. He controls Thomas, but one thing, Wrath says, will stop Wrath's control. Anxiety. Part 27. Virgil.
Roman harshly pulled away from me, confusion in his glossy eyes. He grabbed onto his hair and began pulling. He backed up, almost heading the door. He dropped to his knees. I was by his side instantly. "Roman, holy hell, what's wrong?" He failed to answer. His teeth were locked against each other. His eyes were slam shut, and his face was going red. "Roman, breathe!" I yelled at him. Loose tears fell down my face in panic. He let go of his hair and put his his hands down on the floor, pushing himself up. He banged his fist on the ground and let out an awful scream. I clutched my ears and wiped my eyes. This was hard to watch. Why can't everything just be normal for 1 minute? His arms went limp and he fell forward. I crawled over to him, putting his head in my lap. He looked normal, as if nothing has happened. I dug my nails deep into his shoulders and shook him. I didn't care how long it took. I needed him right now. His eyes slowly opened up groggily. He looked at me. I gave him a hopeful, open-mouthed smile. He sat upright and I hugged him. I'm so glad you're okay, I mumbled into his chest. I felt his hand on my shoulder. I thought he was going to hug me back, but instead, he pushed me away from him. Roman? His eyes were half open, but he was fully awake. He had a bored expression, and his eyes seemed duller.
Why wouldn't I be okay, Virgil?
He said, very monotone. My eyebrows arched in surprise, but I leaned down in wonder. What the heck is wrong with him? Did he hit his head? Is he joking? I went to put my hand down to his hand, but he pulled back, looking at my hand as if he were the plague. Roman, it's me, I pleaded.
I know it's you.
Then why are you acting like this?
Simple, Virgil. You're a dark side.
I felt like my head has been pushed into a wall. Why would he say that? He knows I hate when that's all people assume about me. He knows I'm not proud of that fact. Is that really what he thinks of me? No, something can't be right here. I had an idea. I looked into his half-gray eyes. He looked blankly into mine. What was the first creative thought Thomas ever had? I questioned. Roman rolled his eyes and huffed.
He wanted to color dragging, and we were done with the questions?
No, I spat. He raised an eyebrow. Not just a dragon. He wanted to color a rainbow dragon because he believed dragons could be gay too. You were so proud of that idea as a creator. You only gave up on now if you weren't creativity anymore. My hand shook as I finished. Roman's face didn't shift or show any signs of anything. He looked empty. He put his hands on his knees and pulled himself to standing.
Perhaps I'm not the creative Roman you know, but Thomas is changing as a person. Wrath is in command of him now, and my job is to make sure you don't stop Thomas, like you always do.
He grabbed me by my neck and lifted me up. My hands clawed at his, but he didn't seem to care. With robotic steps, he carried me out into the bathroom. He carried me out of my bathroom, and I was headed towards the door in the hallway. In a blind fit of rage, I kicked Roman in the stomach. He let me go, and I stumbled back. I was gasping for air, but I didn't have time to stop. I pushed him again. I watched him fall back onto my bed. His movements were slow and predictable. I ran out of the door, shutting it behind me. I had to find a barricade. I ran into Logan's room and found a plank of wood from a project he must be working on. I grabbed it and ran back to my door. I shoved the plank between the door and its knob, took a step back, ready to run if I needed to. I heard Roman jiggle the knob. My heart froze. When the door didn't open and the jiggling stopped, I knew he was trapped inside. I leaned back against the wall behind me. I let out a small, slightly insane-sounding laugh. I can't believe that worked. I wiped my wet eyes again. Roman wasn't Roman. That much was clear. And if Roman is acting up, then Logan and Patton must be on the frizz too. I stood up again and walked towards the hallway. I took heavy steps down the stairs. My heart was heavy and my mind was full. I don't really know how to fix this. I don't know what happened to Remus or Deceit. If they were here, if they'd know what to do. They were always able to keep Wrath away. I jumped onto the bottom step. My eyes traveled to the control panel and on the screen. I noticed there was a notice on the screen that I couldn't read. I moved closer to it, my eyes scanning carefully.
Please note, the reprogram is complete and anxiety function is no longer active.
No longer active? I'm right here. My aura, though, as long as it doesn't belong to me, the mind can't recognize it. I canceled the notice and was watching through Thomas's eyes now. He was in his apartment, his hands held together in his lap. His leg was bouncing up and down. He was contemplating something. I turned up the audio on his incoming thoughts. They were all coming from Wrath. Do it, he said to Thomas. You don't have anything to lose. Your channel is failing anyway. Rent's getting higher and higher. Might as well give up. Then you'll live to your real potential, to destroy or get destroyed. Thomas nodded and stood up. His hands were shaking, but he took the idea. I started smashing keys on the board, trying to figure out the idea that Wrath had just put into Thomas's head. When I found out, I let out a panic scream. Wrath has convinced Thomas to delete his channel. This is fucking crazy. My heart was thumping, pounding even. My hands started to press keys and buttons, anything to let go of that idea. I was so panicked. I was scared. I had to face it. Any idea I gave to Thomas, Wrath can cancel out directly while he's in the subconscious. Wiping tears from my blurry eyes, I was still slightly panicking. My side of the panel was dead. Without my aura, I'm useless. Doing anything on the other panels wasn't doing much either. I knew only my panel would work for me. Of course. But it's broken. It's broken. Thomas is going upstairs to get his laptop. I don't even know if Thomas realizes what he's doing. Raph could just be controlling him mindlessly. Without my aura, Thomas had no anxiety. I can't stop him. I felt the room darken around me. I was scared. I had to admit it to myself. If I had just pushed Raph into limbo when I had the chance, this wouldn't be happening. Logan, Patton, and Roman would be here with me. So would Deceit and Remus. Everything would be normal. Why am I such a fuck-up? My eyes sprang open. I didn't realize they were closed. A thought crossed my mind. How can Thomas have no anxiety if I'm anxious right now? Maybe I'm overthinking this, or maybe I'm on to something? No, I have to be. I am anxiety. Thomas doesn't just have a random amount of anxiety generated by my aura. No, I created my aura in the first place. It comes from me. I turned to face the panel. Thomas was on his YouTube channel. Mouse over the delete icon button. I could stop this. Heard the sound of wood breaking. Roman, he was breaking out. I looked at the stairs and saw him making his way down the stairs. I rapidly hit buttons on my panel. With each button I hit, my panel lit up more and more. I smiled as my plan worked. I looked back again. Roman was reaching out to grab me. I quickly hit the command button down. Thomas stopped. Roman stopped. Everything seemed to stop.
Part 28. Deceit. I must have woken up a couple hours later. My head was fuzzy, and my ears were ringing. I guess I hit my head harder than I thought. I looked up slowly, my neck popping. My vision was fading back into focus. I wish it hadn't. I was now looking upon Logan, whose tie was loose and his glasses were upside down on his face. Patton was even worse. He was violently ripping his cat onesie cardigan to shreds. If it wasn't bad enough, Patton was laughing like Remus would. It must be too late. I looked up at the platform. Wrath was watching Thomas. He was whispering to him, giving him thoughts and ideas. I couldn't make out what he was saying, but I watched as Thomas' head bobbed up and down. Wrath cackled with glee. Thomas took his idea. Wrath turned around and made eye contact with me. My face went red and my heart froze.
You're awake, I see.
I swallowed harshly. He looked over to Patton and Logan. There was still little of their own worlds.
Hey!
Wrath shouted to them. They both looked up at him. Patton seemed slightly annoyed, and Logan seemed confused.
Do I have to spell it out for you? Get moving along with the plan.
Logan and Patton both stood and started moving towards me. A spike of panic shot through me. I tried to move, but found my leg was chained to a wall. I struggled against it, but not in time. Patton unlocked the chain and roughly grabbed my arm. Logan did the same. Wrath hopped down from the platform and walked over out of the room. I was dragged along behind them. We walked out into the main subconscious with all of our glowing sections. Almost all of our glowing sections I could see into Roman's, Patton's, and Logan's. All of their coding looked much different than before. Wrath had done it. Wrath really did rewrite Thomas. He stepped in front of my section. Its glowing was weak yellow, probably because I didn't have my aura. Patton giggled wickedly. What are we doing to him? Torture? I hope it's torture, he said, grinning at me.
We could throw him into the Light and Mind Palace,
Logan suggested.
That's why you're not logic anymore. You and your ideas are idiotic. Patton growled.
Quiet, you animals!
Wrath demanded. He turned his attention back to me. He put one hand on my section and examined it.
You know, Deceit. I was tempted to rewrite your section of Thomas too. I could have made you the perfect little addition to Thomas's new life.
Wrath sighed.
But alas, you didn't make the cut. So then the question was, what am I going to do with Deceit? Can't really put him anywhere. He knows the Mind Palace like the back of his gloves. But then it hit me. I can't make you join me. And I can't find a place to put you. You're going to be cut off.
My eyes widened. No, you can't be serious, I shouted, struggling against Logan and Patton.
Oh, but I am.
Wrath purred. Patton howled with laughter. Logan looked confused. Wrath switched his attention to my dull yellow section.
Let's see. What to break first?
He grabbed a piece of my code. My teeth gnashed together, growing angry as he messed with everything that I am.
Likes and dislikes.
Wrath smashed it in his hand. I screamed out as I started to become see-through.
Hopes and dreams?
Another thing smashed.
Your room?
Another thing smashed. Stop it! I cried. Patton put his hand around my lips. Wrath smirked and reached out for another bit.
Oh, this'll be the big one.
He showed it to me. I broke into a cold sweat.
All memories of Remus.
Tears started to fall down my face. Why? He could take anything else, just not the one thing I had left to Remus. He was crushing it in his hands. The code was cracking. Memories were slipping from my mind. I tried to hold on to them, but it was useless. Penn was on the edge of his seat, rocking back and forth on his toes. That stopped, though. He froze. Then Patton. Then Logan froze. Everything seemed to stop. He dropped my Remus coat on the floor, and it flew back into my section. Penn and Logan let go of me and fell to the floor. Wrath was yelling out in anger. His eye with the yellow and purple tint was glowing brightly. It faded fast, and I felt my aura flow back through me. I felt alive again, like I hadn't been me in a very long time. I stretched out my hands and smiled. I was really me again. Wrath grabbed me by the collar and pulled me close to his face. His eyes were glowing, his natural reddish orange. I chuckled at him. Don't look at me. You said it yourself. Anxiety always comes back. His eyes widened, but grew even more angered. He threw me out of the subconscious. I was inches away from the limbo. Wrath's stomping feet were marching closer. I sprang back onto my feet. My mouth rose to a smirk. I focused my aura onto myself and summoned yet my other set of arms. Wrath looked a little afraid at first. It's me versus you, Wrath. Do you really want to do this? Wrath growled and summoned his weapon, a whip. He lashed it at me, but I was able to grab it. I swung it over my head. He was now balancing on the edge of limbo. I let go of the whip and extended my arms so that I could push him over. And I did. I pushed him over, but he grabbed onto me. I was pulled along with him, us falling into limbo too. My heart was beating like a drum. I heard Wrath's voice trail downwards. I closed my eyes, but the wind of my hair stopped. I looked up to see Patton grabbed onto me and to one of my too many arms. He was struggling, but managed to pull me out of limbo. Patton fell backwards once I touched the ground again. Logan caught Patton in his arms. They both looked at me. I was panting and still in some shock. I looked up at both of them and started laughing. Even though I was smiling, small tears were coming out of my eyes. Patton started laughing and crying too. Logan soon joined, but only chuckled and didn't cry. Patton pulled me closer and wrapped me in a hug. My other arms vanished, and I returned his hug. I looked to Logan, who gave me a loving smile. Patton let go, his eyes on me. What happened? Wrath rewrote you. You two are crazy as your opposites. Please, never change. They both laughed. Is that why my card hang is just a massive heap of cotton and fluff? Patton questioned.
And is that why my glasses weren't on correctly?
Logan asked. I nodded and let out another laugh. Damn, it's good to be back.
Your section of subconscious seems to be damaged.
Logan added. I nodded my head. Patton looked at Logan. Well, Patton seems nervous. Logan faced red confidence.
We can fix that.
Part 29. Virgil.
It was working. Thomas was second-guessing his choice to delete the channel. He moved his mouse away from the delete icon and removed his computer from his lap. I smiled to myself, watching him leave the room. I did it. I heard a big thud from behind me. I turned around and saw Roman sprawled out on the floor. I gasped out, running by his side. I laced my hands between his limp fingers and prayed. I hope I did this right. I closed my eyes tightly to stop my tears. I felt a hand grip my mind back. I opened my eyes and saw him looking at me, a smile across his face.
Emo?
He asked, his smile even wider. Princey! I exclaimed, jumping into his arms. My arms were connected with him in a massive hug. I let out a couple soft sobs of joy. I pulled away and met Roman's lips with mine. It felt so good. It felt like this was my first kiss with him in years. I love you so much.
I love you too, baby.
He said. We looked at each other again. I don't think either of us really believed we were actually looking at each other.
You have to tell me what the hell just happened.
Roman laughed. You became predictable, I stated. Roman gasped dramatically. I know, it wasn't a good look on you, I teased. We both laughed again. Wrath had given Thomas the idea to delete his channel. Thomas took the idea and almost did it, but I was able to stop him, I said excitedly.
I'm proud of you.
Roman cooed. We kissed again and pulled apart when he heard the imagination's door click shut. We both stopped and stared at the stairs. Roman stood up and summoned his sword. I stood up too, falling anxiously behind the prince. We only made it up a few steps before we saw Logan, Patton, and Deceit at the top of the staircase.
Kiddos!
Patton screamed as he jumped into Roman's arms. Roman's sword vanished as he caught Patton and stumbled back down the few steps we had climbed. I hopped off the stairs and watched as Logan and Deceit made their way down. I hugged Deceit tightly as soon as he walked down the last step. I was so worried. After Wrath shot me, everything's a big blur. I pleaded.
Hey, take it easy.
Deceit said comfortingly.
You're fine.
Roman put Patton down, who then ran into me for a hug. Roman looked around. He was confused.
Where's Remus?
Patton pulled away from me. He looked back and forth between Deceit, Roman, and I. Remus fell into limbo. Logan hummed sadly. I gasped and Roman's shoulders dropped.
Oh.
Was all Roman said. What about Wrath? I asked.
He awaited a fate the same.
Deceit said. We nodded again, and we stood there in silence for a long second. No one knew what to say.
Talk about a mood killer.
Patton joked. We all laughed. Roman directed everyone towards the counter. We sat and talked for hours. Obviously, we all wanted answers as to what happened when we were all in our little comas. Logan told Patton about his breakdown when he first saw Patton lying lifeless on his bed. Me and Roman told the group about the big fight between us and Logan. I told Deceit what it was like having one of my nightmares where I could see into the Mind Palace. Roman, Logan, and Patton were discussing how they woke up in their first thoughts. As for me, I kept quiet. I was just happy. Happy that my family was whole again. Happy that we can all laugh about this. Happy that Thomas and all of his sides were back to normal. And that's how it would stay.
Holy shit, thank you all for watching. That was that existed.
Definitely. That was,
They never specified, like, what happened to, Deceit's memories and stuff. Like, how did Logan repair? Also, everything is not back to normal like in the last chapter. Where the heck is Remus?
Yeah, and if they don't come back, whatever, then, like, how... Okay, Thomas isn't normal without, the two sides. Even though Wrath wasn't contributing much towards the majority of his life, besides, like, making it worse, it was still, like...
Contributing something.
Yeah, he was there. He existed. He was there, therefore he was still with Thomas.
Also, how is Wrath its own side? Wrath is an emotion, and that's Patton's job. So, like, how is a part of Patton a whole side?
Yeah.
Like, this book is so confusing, but yet so angsty, and I loved taking all the time to, like, read it and stuff. So this was, like, the last book in it's not going to be a trilogy, it was just 2 books that connected, so that was fun. I am with Diamonds and Emeralds, so you should check her out. She is amazing, like I said earlier in the book. Her channel is in the iCard. It should be popping up on the screen somewhere, and it's in the description below. Anything you want to say?
Yeah, I don't normally do stuff like this, but I used to consider myself more of a voice actor, but, like, I have improved at voice acting, so, like, if you guys have any other ideas for maybe me and Video President to read together, or even just Video President to read if you guys hate me and want me to leave immediately, or, like, if you want me to voice any other characters on her channel, or even on mine, go ahead and leave recommendations over there. I don't remember what my newest video is, or what it will be by the time this comes out, but, if... Go ahead and read and leave recommendations for me to voice act, because I really, really like voice acting.
You're not terrible. People want you around. I could guarantee that. Okay, so that's...
Prove Video President wrong. Call me shit in the comments.
No, prove me right. No. I'm always right. No. You are amazing.
There's going to be a poll. We're going to figure out how to put a poll.
No, YouTube took off polls for the iCard because YouTube's stupid.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
That's sad.
Okay, this outro was like 2 minutes long. We should wrap it up. Okay, thank you all for listening to the story, whether it just be this episode because you're a maniac and only read the last couple chapters of the book, or you read through the whole book. That's really cool. Sub to Diamonds and Emeralds. You want to say it together? And like always, do your best.
Oh my holy shit.